A very good evening to you. Welcome to News 360, coming to you live from our studio here at Adesanwe in Accra. I am Martin Asiedu Date.
And I am Aisha Yakubu Khalid, coming up in the bulletin this evening.
News 360 headlines is brought to you by Deluxy Acrylic Paint,
Kel Charcoal Toothpaste,
Heaven Insecticide Spray and Coil,
and Napa Foods,
Ghana AIDS Commission.
Relief for parents as Ministry of Health takes delivery of first consignment of childhood vaccines after months of shortage.
Later in Mission, we explore how inadequate equipment is impacting healthcare at the CHIPS compound in Kijewu Bato in the East Gonja municipality.
And on the foreign front, UN Libya envoy says national elections in Libya can't be held by the end of the year if clear roadmap and electoral laws are in place by June.
This is News 360 on TV3. We are going to our first story, definitely going heavy on issues regarding health in the country, since it looks as though the concern of vaccine unavailability is being addressed by the government.
The Ministry of Health and the Ghana Health Service have taken delivery of the first consignment of measles vaccines, BCG vaccines, and the oral polio vaccines. This comes after the Sector Minister Kweku Ajimamenu on Thursday answering questions in Parliament said 6.4 million has been paid to UNICEF to supply the vaccines. According to a Facebook post from the Information Ministry, more vaccines are expected in Ghana in the coming weeks from multiple sources. The shortage of childhood vaccines has been of concern to parents who have been turned away from hospitals across the country due to the shortage. The minority in Parliament had said despite the allocation of some 72 million Ghana cedis for the procurement of vaccines, Ghana has been hit with the outbreak of measles since October 2022 due to the shortage of vaccines. President Akufo-Addo on Wednesday, March 8, during the State of the Nation address to Parliament, expressed concern over the shortage of childhood vaccines. We're going on to the phone lines now to talk to Kwabena Mintakando. He is ranking member on the Health Committee and MP for Dwaboso. Good evening, sir, and thank you for joining us on News 360. Now, the Health Minister on Thursday said within 2 to 3 weeks, the vaccines will be in Ghana. We now have reports, some have arrived, though we don't know the quality of the quantity of those that have arrived. Is this good news?
Okay, so first and foremost, let me use this opportunity to thank individuals and groups who also added their voice to pile on pressure on government to do the needful. But this is a vindication of the fact that government was sleeping on the job. They were not being transparent. And let me make this point that whenever there is an outbreak of a disease, one of the most important things is for government or the managers of the disease to be very transparent. There's no way in the world where you pay, monies and in excess of months, you will not get the vaccines. It is especially the first ones, the payment we made in 2022 went to defray the debts we accumulated. And so we are getting this batch of vaccines because of the money we paid only last week. And this is the turnaround time when you pay your vaccines, especially when you have outbreak of the disease in your country. Within 2 weeks, you must receive some consignment of the vaccines to be able to start, confronting the issue, because WHO is of the opinion that if that happens and you pay and they don't come in handy, the disease may spread to nearby countries and what have you. And so I think that it is very important that we have to be transparent anytime we record such disease in our country. It was never true that the payment we made last year was to bring us any new vaccines. But now the most important thing is that we should not stop there. We should continue importing more vaccines, number one. Those that have arrived, we must make sure the distributions are well done, and we will also encourage parents to bring their children out for vaccination. It's very important.
So, with the one that we have received so far, yesterday when we were having the conversation, it turned out that it could have gotten a lot more worse if parents were not getting these vaccines in hospitals. From where you sit, what do you think should be done to ensure that we don't experience such shortage in these health facilities?
Okay, so first and foremost, let me make this point that the president and the minister responsible for health made a statement or made a comment that we hadn't recorded any fatalities. That is false. We have recorded about 5 fatalities, and what is also important is that we don't have, since last year, we have taken samples of these diseases, and confirmations have not been made. And so, number one, we should make sure we have enough reagents, and these laboratories give us confirmations of these test results. I don't want to believe that it is deliberate by government to withhold this information from the public. Now, back to your question. I think that the disease started from somewhere, especially Kushegu in the northern part of the country. I believe that immediately we must deploy these limited quantities to where these disease started. And then we must not end there. We must continue to bring more. And going forward, we don't wait till we are in a particular year before we plan for vaccines for that particular year. We plan for vaccines for the following year. And we don't have to sit down until we run short of vaccines before we think about importing vaccines. It is not done anywhere, because every minute, every second, every hour, new babies are being born. And these vaccines are time-bound. And so it is never true, never true that there was shortage of these vaccines in the world. It is not true. Ghana paid about 1 week or 10 days ago, and today we are taking first delivery. It means that any time you make payments, within 2 weeks turnaround time, you are receiving vaccines. So it is not true. It is not in shortage, and that we should not end there. Nobody should go and come and tell us that after the first consignment, we are not getting vaccines to buy in the world. That is not true. And we will not take those excuses. We'll continue to monitor wherever samples of these vaccines will go.
But are we aware of the quantity we have so far?
I am not aware of the quantity so far. I believe that by Monday, Tuesday, we will go to the appropriate courts, even if you have to file urgent question on the floor of the House for the minister to come back, to come and answer, or to appear again before the committee to come and answer. We've assured him that not until this issue is fixed.
Mr. Mintakando, right. Before I let you go, however, I think it's been 3 years since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the country. Do you think, in your assessment, that we have learned anything so far from that?
One of the major lessons that we have learned is that whenever there's a pandemic of this nature and we take the opportunity to rake in more monies, we must use the money to expand and develop the health sector. Unfortunately, we have received not less than 25 billion Ghana cedis, but we have recklessly spent the money without using the money to develop the health sector of the country. And one of the things we should also learn from is that we should not wait until we have a pandemic before we develop our health facilities. That should not be done, because had it not been University of Ghana Medical Center, the Maritime University, the Maritime Hospital, the Bank of Ghana Hospital, these hospitals that were built by the S1 administration, John Mahama administration, would have found wanting during the COVID period.
Grateful for your time this evening.
Ahead.
Thank you very much for joining us on News 360. Kwabena Mintakando is ranking member of the Health Committee in Parliament.
We're staying on issues regarding health and vaccines and, global pandemic. So beyond what we are having in the country currently, having to do with the outbreak of measles and the vaccines that are coming in, let's look at one that hit the entire world, which is the COVID-19. Today, Saturday, the 11th of March, marks exactly 3 years since COVID-19 was officially declared a global pandemic by the World Health Organization. As the pandemic enters its 4th year, the virus is still killing hundreds of people per day worldwide. The death toll is nearing 7 million people. COVID is not the first global health crisis, and experts say it is likely not to be the last. The United Nations Health Organization says it's not yet ready to say the emergency has ended. The pandemic is still killing, between 900 and 1,000 people daily on a global scale. And in Ghana, the Minister for Health announced that Ghana's first case was recorded on the 12th of March, which is actually 3 years tomorrow. But we want to find out, have we learned any lessons from this pandemic, and how prepared are we as a nation to ensure that we are better prepared in case of any other global pandemic? Let's pick the thoughts of Dr. Michael Owusu, who is a virologist with the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research into Tropical Medicine, KCCR. Doc, a very good evening to you, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good evening to you, and good evening to all your viewers.
To start with, 3 years on, what would you say are the topical lessons, not just for Ghana, but then on the global scale? Is it that we're all caught unawares, definitely, but then 3 years on, what are some of the lessons you'd say we have learned as a people that we can narrow the conversation to Ghana?
Yes, I think globally we have learned a lot. If you have followed through the history of outbreaks and pandemics, since the 2003 outbreak of SARS coronavirus 1, this is the next outbreak that has caused a lot of panic across the globe. So, every single country has learned to be quite innovative, has been able to put in systems in health and in schools and in financial systems. And people have changed policies that will be able to enable them cope with the changing trend. And every country is unique, and therefore every country has learned something that going forward they will be able to use to tackle this. If you have to go through countries on case-by-case basis, you will appreciate that many things have changed, and which is going to make the world better placed to be able to deal with the next pandemic that may come.
On the global scale, there was a big fear after it broke in China and then the European areas and then in the Americas, when people were dying like flies, as they said. There was a natural fear that when it hits Africa, the case was going to be worse. But it looks as though the cases being recorded in Africa and the death have also been on the low. What, in your estimation, throughout the period, may have accounted for the low infection and low death rates in Africa and maybe in Ghana? Hello, Doc, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Great. So I was asking that there was a fear that when the coronavirus comes into Africa, and specifically countries like Ghana, we're going to be worse affected in terms of the death rate. But that seemed to have been the reverse. Have scientists been able to pinpoint why our infection rate was lower than expected, and then the death rate as well?
Well, this is a question that is still subject of interest, and for which many scientists are still trying to understand why and what really happened. But it's telling us something, that these decisions were made based on models that were made by the West to be able to predict based on what we have seen so far. But it's telling us that the reality against models are not something that we should just take in a good trust and implement it. Aside that, within the African population, many people are beginning to study the immune systems and what makes people within African origin much able to withstand against these kind of wild infections compared to those in the West. Others are beginning to look at particular genetic features, and many also are looking at prior exposure to many other agents, including malaria, including human coronaviruses, including respiratory viruses. that may put us a bit in advantage compared to those also in the other countries. But then we have to understand that this depends on the kind of virus. I mean, Ebola struck in Liberia, in Guinea, in Sierra Leone, and many people died. So every virus has its own features. When it comes to respiratory viruses, it appears that we are able to withstand very well. But then if they come to the viral hemorrhagic fever viruses, it doesn't respect an African, it doesn't respect the West. So this is particularly based on the virus. And I think that it's too early, but we need to understand this more to be able to understand what makes us and puts us at a better advantage than other people from the West.
Right. And finally and briefly, would you say Ghana, you know, we are out of the woods when it comes to the pandemic, because wearing of nose masks and then the washing of hands, those protocols have all not, you know, we are not adhering to them as we used to. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you study the trend of the virus, you can already understand that the virus has reached its saturation points. And from now going, we are likely to record seasonal, outbreaks, not global or countrywide outbreaks like we have seen before. So if people have cold, you may have 1 or 2 people who may have SARS-CoV-2 as part of the normal flu that people get, because that is the trend and that is how these viruses behave. We are only waiting for the next virus to perhaps erupt, but I don't know if it is possible. But then if you study the trend of viruses, maybe from 5-10 years now, it is possible that we may see something of that sort. But then talking about the lessons, I mean, one of the key things we have not been able to do well is trying to undo the good behavioral practices that we learned. I mean, clearly washing of hands is completely abandoned. Veronica Barker's advantage point is no more working. Alcohol sanitizers at shops, at banks, at workplaces, you don't see this anymore. Construction making room for adequate ventilation is still also not working. So the key thing about behavior change that some of us thought that we will learn to be able to deal with things like emerging meningitis, cholera outbreaks, and many other pathogens that may come in the future, which for me will be able to help us to withstand these things we seem to have dropped. And it's very difficult and painful that with all that we have been through, we are not carrying the good things forward in terms of behavioral change. And this, for me, is something that we have to really look at and see how best, as a country, we can use this to equip ourselves to deal with future outbreaks that may come in.
We are grateful for your time, Dr. Michael Owusu, the virologist with KCCR. So the lessons are there for all of us to learn. Let's keep the protocols in place and make sure we do not fall foul when it comes to the spread of these kinds of viruses. This is still News 360 on TV3. On to some other stories this evening. The Kente cloth has always been at the center of Ghana's history, but with modernized versions of the rich cloth taking center stage, are concerns that the century-old fabric is losing its original value. Aisha Yakubu has been finding out.
One cloth that largely represents Ghana, its culture and its people is the Kente. It is an iconic representation of the country's history, ethnic groups, social values and heritage. A fabric believed to be inspired by the spider's artistry at making its web, Kente's foundation dates back to the 17th century. From royalty to the common man, Kente is a symbol of wealth.
Kente was originally used in certain forms and specifically for some specific people. It was meant for people in higher places, chiefs, queens, abrempong, who are next to the kings and queens, and then people who were very rich.
With an ever more fashionable and fashion-conscious society, Kente is taking center stage in all occasions these days. Kente has been modernized and used beyond the Ghanaian royal court, as there are now different versions, new patterns and colors.
When I got into the business, it was more about the traditional Kente, like the agency, Jinso, Fatia Fatankroma, and the likes. Those were the ones that were there in colors. But with time, you know, things have to evolve. People prefer other things. You can't keep having the same fatia fatankroma for everyone. So to be able to be in business, our weavers also have work to do. And to keep it exciting for the customers, we have to evolve. And that is where all these modern types are coming into play.
Baba Ankra has been in the Kente cloth business for 12 years. She tells me not only have things evolved in the past 10 years, but 80% of her clients would rather have the modern Kente than the traditional ones. The cost, however, an issue for many.
Expensive is good. It's hand-woven. It's hard work. It's hard labor. We have to make the people that sit and weave this thing have the pride. Anything handmade is luxury. We are supposed to promote our own and support. We travel outside Ghana and really spend on expensive things. I agree it should be affordable for a lot more people to own it, but we shouldn't downplay it.
Bertha Sapong is creative director of Mother Bertha, a fashion house that is known for typically making Kente outfits.
These days, when anybody walks in, being it wanting a graduation outfit, being it wedding guest outfit, bridal, birthday party, they all want to, you know, have a Kente outfit. About 80% of the people who come and request for an outfit would want the new modern Kente.
There have been concerns, however, regarding the excessive use of the modern Kente. Osoi Bunsu Safu Kantanka is unhappy with how the cloth is used sometimes.
Certainly, if you have something you treasure, you don't have to demean it by using it as a rag, using it as a tablecloth, using it for other things that are not important. We have to be very selective, know which areas are demeaning and which areas should not be used.
Both Baba and Bertha also believe history is not being distorted with how the cloth has evolved. They, however, would not want the public to lose sight of it completely.
The colors will change, it will evolve over time. That is how we would get people still in love with Kente. But then it's not taking the authenticity anyway, because that is in the work that goes in the weaving processes.
We shouldn't let go of the traditional Kente entirely, but I think that we should also evolve at the same time. So I feel like we should just add onto the old designs so that it makes it a bit interesting.
Whether modern or traditional, Kente would forever be of high value and always be a representation of the culture and heritage of Ghana, and protecting it will be in the best interest of the country. Aisha Yakubu Khalid, TV3 News, Accra. To some more stories tonight, private legal practitioner Martin Pebu has criticized the military for the brutalities meted out to some civilians at Ashaiman over the killing of a soldier. Speaking on the key points, he noted the unfortunate happenings in Ashaiman is as a result of failed leadership.
The stabbing to death of Imoro Sharif, a 21-year-old soldier whose body was found in a pool of blood near the Amania Hotel in Ashaiman, led to severe action by the military. The military high command on Tuesday sanctioned what it said was an intelligence-led operation to fish out the perpetrators of the crime. Residents of Ashaiman, Tulaku and Taifa were whipped, stomped and spanked into submission during the assault. In the course of the operation, several civilians were brutalized by the military, something that has courted widespread criticism. Contributing to the discussion on key points, political scientist at the University of Ghana, Professor Ransford Jampel, was of the opinion that the impression should not be created that at any time the police or the military can be attacked.
All over the world, no one has got the right to attack the state. Nobody. Those who are in uniform represent the state. And sometimes, no matter how you disagree with them, you cannot hit them, you cannot attack the state. And let me also make this point, that all over the world, if you attack a soldier like this, soldiers react. It is hypocrisy on our part for us to say that if Fundi for the one who is dead, he has no right again We are not commiserating with the family. But we are all of a sudden showing a certain empathy and promoting or talking about the human rights of other people who I'm sure some of whom may be privy to information regarding who did what happened. All of a sudden, we believe in their rights, and then we are stolen their rights.
Tamale Central lawmaker Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed wants heads to roll.
I was shocked that the Deputy Minister for Defense told us that it was an instruction from the Military High Command. No one can tell me President Nanado was not aware of what happened in Ashama. He is the Commander-in-Chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. If the President didn't know of this action, then heads must roll. And I think that we should be asking the question, was it sanctioned by just the Military High Command, or it was sanctioned by the ministry? If the President says he's unaware, then he must fire the Minister for Defense.
Private legal practitioner Martin Pigbu could not agree more. He called the brutalities meted out by the military as mob justice.
As citizens, we don't seem to want to assert our rights. I don't understand why we are seated here and we've just allowed the military to do this. But now we should be in the streets protesting that the president should have resigned. And as usual, you know, the vice, the military high command, the, what do you call it, CDS, Amuama, the chief, the other hierarchy in the military. This particular one, we can't call it any soup. This thing that the military have done is not a soup. This is just mob justice. What the military did there is mob justice. It's not a soup. They just went out there to retaliate. It's vengeance. This is not a soup.
Meanwhile, the police, after a week of sustained intelligence-led operation, have arrested the key suspects involved in the murder.
To politics now, former President John Dramani Mahama says President Akufo-Addo has been reckless with borrowing and the management of the Ghanaian economy. John Mahama was reacting to the president's claim in his State of the Nation address that his government has not been reckless in the management of the economy, borrowing and spending.
President Akufo-Addo, during the State of the Nation address, said his government has not been reckless in borrowing. Although he says questions that have been asked regarding the debt situation of the country are legitimate, he said there are projects to show for the borrowings that have been done over the period.
Mr. Speaker, let me state emphatically that we have not been reckless in borrowing and in spending. It is worth noting that the debts we're serving were not only contracted during the period of this administration. Mr. Speaker, we'll spend money on things that are urgent, to build roads and bridges and schools, to train our young people and equip them to face a competitive world. Considering the amount of work that still needs to be done on the state of our roads, the bridges that have to be built, considering the number of classrooms that need to be built, the furniture and equipment needs at all stages of education, considering the number of children who should be in school and are not, considering the number of towns and villages that still do not have access to potable water, I dare say no one can suggest we have overborrowed or spent recklessly.
But former President John Mahama, who is contesting to lead his party to the 2024 elections, maintained that the president and his administration have been reckless.
If you're a person who leads people, the first principle of leadership is responsibility. You must take responsibility for every situation and work to solve it. If you don't take responsibility, and you are the kind of leader who is always looking for somebody to blame, you will never be able to solve problems. When this government took over from our government, the total national debt was 120 billion. Today, that debt is almost 600 billion. In 5.5 short years. And the president had the temerity to say that there has been no recklessness in borrowing. What else is recklessness than what he and his finance minister have done?
Speaking during a campaign tour of Nkranza North constituency, John Mahama said the minority in parliament had always been drawing government attention to its increased appetite for borrowing.
And it's not that the attention was not drawn. From 2018, every budget that they brought, the minority in parliament said, you are overborrowing. Even the World Bank told them that you are risking going into debt distress because of too much debt. And they refused to listen. And today, exactly what they were warned would happen is what has happened. And then you can come and stand in front of the people, you won't take responsibility, nothing, and then you say that there's been no recklessness in borrowing. And then you count some things and say, we did this with the money and all that. If he's always quick to shift blame, there's no way he understands the proportion of the problem we're facing.
And now the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament is expected to visit Boko and Nalergu on Sunday, March 12 and Monday, March 13. The scheduled meeting, according to TV3 sources, is part of the committee's oversight of security issues in the country. The committee will depart Accra tomorrow morning to Bolgatanga, where they will have a meeting with the Regional Coordinating Council. They will then proceed to Boko and hold separate meetings with the Municipal Security Council, Boko Naba, the Kusasi representative, and the Mamprusi representatives as well. On Monday, March 13, the committee will visit Nalergu to hold an engagement with the Nairi before returning to Accra. This will be the first time the committee will be visiting Boko since the renewed conflict broke out in November 2021. Hundreds of people have been killed, others maimed, with the residents blaming the military over needless killings.
Investigative journalist Manasseh Azuri-Arine has launched a book on investigative journalism. In the book, which is titled Investigative Journalism in Africa, a Practical Manual, Manasseh Azuri uses his own experience to chart a path for journalists and students who want to venture into undercover reporting.
Launched. We recommend it to students, we recommend it to lecturers.
Many years ago, two men decided to steal a goat and share the meat.
Mr. ABAJ, do you know of a company called Talents Discovery Limited? I do. Is it your company? No.
The book, Investigative Journalism in Africa, a Practical Manual, demystifies what investigative journalism is about and serves as an invaluable resource for both professionals and students. With no experience in investigative journalism, Manasseh Azuri recalled how a call 10 years ago from an informant on corruption in Ghana's youth employment program led him to write his first investigative piece.
I hadn't learned any lesson in investigative reporting, but the person who gave me that lead only said, I want you to do it because I know you have the character to do it. A lot of people would take money and not follow the story because the people involved were very powerful and extremely rich. Of course, they got rich by stealing from all of us.
He urged journalists and students hoping to venture into undercover and investigative journalism to be of good character, be professional, and abide by ethics.
The young journalists who want to do this work, do it with your heart. Do it with a clean conscience. It is not something you enjoy, but it is something you look back and be proud of your contribution to the building of our country.
Vice-Chancellor of the University of Professional Studies, Professor Abednego Fehi Oko Amate, acknowledged the enormous contribution of investigative journalism to Ghana's development.
The importance of this genre of journalism on the functioning of a democratic society cannot be underscored. It serves as a powerful tool for the promotion of social justice issues and the highlight of human rights abuses. The tremendous results of his craft are evidenced in the imprisonment of individuals, the passage of a law by Parliament, the dismissal of dozens of top officials, and the cancellation of contracts that have saved Ghana hundreds of millions of cedis.
Manasseh Azuri is one of Ghana's foremost investigative journalists and a staunch anti-corruption crusader. The new book is his fourth following the Fourth John Reign, Rejection and Rebound in 2020, Letters to My Future Wife in 2017, and Voice of Conscience in 2016. The book on investigative journalism serves as an invaluable resource for both professionals and students, acting as a bridge between theory and practice.
You're watching News 360 live here on TV3. We have more news for you right after this break.
The sweet scent of rose in the morning brings me so much joy. Inspired by damask rose and infused with 100% natural rose oil. Introducing new Clay Soft Perfume Beast Washing Powder. It's like bringing a garden with you everywhere with this wonderful perfume. Take a garden with you everywhere you go with Clay Soft Perfume Beast Washing Powder.
Are you tired of struggling with bad financial situations? At Quick Credit, we understand the difficulties that come with transitioning to a better one. That's why we're here to simplify the process for you. With loan facilities from 1,500 cedis upwards, all you have to do is call and we will take care of the rest. All you need is your national ID. No savings, no collateral, no susu, no deposits, and no account opening required. Quick Credit has you covered. Whether you're expanding a business, starting a new one, facing an emergency like school fees or funeral expenses, or even just in need of a salary loan. What are you waiting for? Call Quick Credit today. 0302 200 390 or 059 692 0833. We do not give loans via the internet. Quick Credit is regulated and licensed by the Bank of Ghana. Terms and conditions apply. Quick Credit. Lending made simple.
Magic pepper and onion, a delicious tomato mix with tomato, pepper, and onion. No grinding, no blending. Ya yenini na da da da. So pa mediane no abe.
Come on, Gino, do your magic.
And papa no kunu abe fie.
Jan tasty magic.
Gino Magic Pepper and Onion. The magic that brings them home.
This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. It's now time for Mission. Mission is supported by Star Ghana Foundation with thanks to FCDO. Cracked walls, inadequate equipment, and lack of space at the Chiefs compound in Kijewu is negatively affecting healthcare delivery there. The facility, opened only last year, is struggling to meet the health needs of residents of Kijewu Bator in the East Gonja municipality of the Savannah region. My colleague Komla Adum reports the situation is preventing residents from seeking healthcare there, including pregnant women.
Kijewu Bator, a